FMLA kicks in at 50 employees, and she said, you know, that there's only a handful of ESA members who have 50 or more employees. So I'm going to cover this quickly, but what I want to highlight is that if you are in a state or locality that has a state FMLA, a lot of these concepts will apply to you under your state laws. So we can't give you an exact one-for-one, but it's an important area to be careful about. So one of the things is on FMLA, and again, if you have a state rule, is that you need to tell people, hey, you're burning your benefits. So if you have a state law that covers a company smaller than 50, you're going to have the same basic concepts. You need to actually say, okay, this law gives you this privilege, you've started using it up. And so a lot of times what happens is I'll have a client call me and they'll say, well, we had a guy went off on workers' comp. It looks like he's going to be off for a long time, and we want to cut off his health insurance, which you can do legally at the end of 12 weeks. And I said, well, when did you give them their FMLA notice? And they said, oh, blah, 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 blah. We haven't given them their notice yet. And I'm like, well, you haven't started the 12-week cycle, so you have not started the 12-week countdown until you take them off health insurance. You say, well, you know, what's behind that? Well, what we ran into is we've had a handful of clients, including some ESA members, who have had these folks out on workers' comp, thought it was a fairly minor injury, and they're out forever. And what we found out is they're getting 2/3 of their pay under workers' comp. They're getting their health insurance still continuing, even though they have to make their contribution to it. And there wasn't a lot of pressure for these folks to come back to work. Now, certainly you can call your workers' comp carrier and say, are you guys doing rehabilitation? Are you meeting with them? Are these people showing up for doctor visits? There's certainly a lot of other things that you can do to try and get this rocking and rolling again. But what we found is if you follow these FMLA guidelines, basically, and at the end, and if you're not covered by FMLA, it's whatever your company policy is, maybe 4 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. But at some point you say, hey, look, we still love you, you're still entitled to come back to work, but we don't provide health insurance indefinitely to people who aren't showing up for work every day. And we found that taking them out of health insurance tended to be a tremendous incentive where people magically got better and showed up for work again. So just a little tip inside this one. But one of the things to caution you about, also tied in with this slide, is when you have people who are out due to a non-work related injury, depending again on your policy or under FMLA, if it's FMLA, it's at the end of 12 weeks, you can cut that person off the payroll, and then they have to reapply when they come back to work. Remember, 12 weeks is a long period of time. Very, very few people with modern medicine are out more than that. If they're out more than that, there's a good chance they're under some type of disability. They're not going to become able to come back full on, and maybe not at all. So that's why we look at these things. And again, companies that are under the 50 employees follow either state law or follow their own policy. Most of my clients are usually 4 to 8 weeks. If a person's out that long, they're sent a Dear John letter. You know, we appreciate it when you're cleared by your doctor, come back to work. We usually give them a notice, say if you're close, get your doctor note and we'll look at work hardening, we'll work at some way of getting you back into the job. But if you're not, we'll catch you, you know, reapply when you're cleared to return to work. So that's, I know it sounds like hard love, but again, my job as an employer advocate is to protect your assets, is to not have you spending a lot of money on health insurance on people who are not coming to work every day. Again, it's pretty straightforward, but again, those who can come back to work tend to be prompted when you have that discussion with them, so it works out pretty well. Now here's an important caution, and we'll move on to the next slide. Keep in mind that workers' comp and non-work related injuries are very different legally. If you have somebody out on workers' comp, you can say, you've run out of your company health insurance at this point. Here's your COBRA notice, and you're on COBRA until you are cleared to return to work. And again, that may prompt some people to make miraculous recoveries. But You cannot terminate that person. And that's called a workers' comp retaliation. It's against the law in almost every state, and you will get sued. So the way we usually word it is, and again, a good idea to work with your attorney on this specific issue, is a standardized letter that says, you're off the company benefits, you've been gone too long. However, you continue on our inactive payroll, and when you're cleared to return to work, your job is waiting for you. So it's a big difference between workers' comp and non-work related, okay? And again, please be careful about your state laws.